The Pacific Ocean is even bigger than we can imagine. Off the coast of Chile, even if you drilled straight through the Earth starting from the Pacific Ocean, you would still emerge on the other side in the Pacific Ocean. Once again, in today's video, let's take a look at some fascinating facts. There are a total of 5 oceans in the world, and among them, the largest is the Pacific Ocean. It covers an area of about almost 170 million square kilometers. You might be surprised to know that the total land area of our planet is only about 148 million square kilometers. This means that even if we exclude all the other oceans and only talk about the Pacific Ocean, it alone is larger than all the mountains, deserts, forests, and islands of the entire world combined. Within this vast ocean, there are only a few islands, and they are so small that compared to this enormous ocean, they look like mere dots. What's even more amazing is that many of these islands have never been visited by humans. In short, if a person gets lost in the Pacific Ocean, the chances of finding them are almost zero. But today, you are going to hear the real story of a man who got lost in the Pacific Ocean on a small boat, and not just for 10 or 15 days, but for a total of 438 days. Yes, this man accidentally set a world record that no one would ever want to break, the longest time spent alone at sea. This record was set by a man named José Alvarenga, who survived 438 days in the ocean on a small 7-foot boat. But the question is, how did he survive alone in the middle of the ocean for 14 months? But before that, let's find out why he went into the ocean. This story begins around 2012 in a small village in Mexico called Costa Azul. A man named Jos, who was 36 years old at the time, lived there. He was an experienced fisherman. On November 17, 2012, Jos set out for fishing on his small boat, along with a partner. Their plan was to spend only about 30 hours at sea. That's why they didn't carry much items with them. On their small 7-foot boat, they only had an engine and a storage container to keep the fish. They carried food and water for just 1 day. Jos had no idea that the next 438 days would become the worst days of his life. They went about 120 kilometers away from the Mexican coast and cast their fishing net into the ocean. But at that very moment, a powerful and dangerous storm suddenly appeared. To save their lives, they abandoned their fishing net and quickly turned back toward the shore. For 6 hours straight, they drove the boat at high speed. By around 7 in the morning, they were just 20 kilometers away from the coast, and they could even see their village. They had managed to escape the storm, but now their luck ran out. Just 20 kilometers away from shore, their boat's engine suddenly stopped working. Now they had no engine, no control over the boat's direction. However, they still had a radio. Through it, they sent their location to their boss and waited for a response. While waiting for a reply from their boss, their radio battery also died. And now, these two fishermen had completely lost contact with the outside world. Jos and his partner were still trying to process what had just happened, when something even worse occurred, something they had never expected. Strong winds began pushing their boat back into the open ocean. The shore they could once see slowly started disappearing from their sight. Meanwhile, their boss organized a search party and tried to locate them, even searching along the coastline. But by then, it was already too late. As the days passed, the chances of Jos and his partner surviving kept decreasing. 5 days had passed since the incident, and the winds had pushed their small boat nearly 450 kilometers away from the shore. They had reached a part of the ocean where, in every direction, there was nothing but endless water. They knew their boat was too small to be spotted from a distance. They had no flares, no signal devices, and no way to start a fire to create smoke signals. By now, both Jos and his companion had realized that their chances of survival were less than 1%. The food and water they had brought with them had already run out. To survive, they started catching birds with their bare hands whenever they landed on the boat. They also began catching fish around the boat and eating them raw. Drinking seawater can be deadly, so they started collecting rainwater in plastic bottles floating in the ocean and used that to survive. However, when it didn't rain for several days, they were forced to quench their thirst by consuming the fluids from fish and even turtles whenever they managed to catch them. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. The mental torture they were going through is something we can hardly even imagine. Eventually, José Alvarenga partner could no longer endure the suffering. And then, on May 4, he took his own life. Now, on that small boat, José had no one left to talk to. Surrounded by the vast ocean, he was completely alone, forced to survive by himself. If you think about it, he was now in one of the most isolated parts of the Pacific Ocean, often considered one of the quietest and most remote places on Earth. Cargo ships rarely pass through this region. More than 6 months had passed since he had left the coast of Mexico, and during this time, he had also lost his companion. Because of this, he had become extremely frustrated and mentally exhausted. One day, José spotted a cargo ship far away in the ocean. It was the first ship he had seen in 6 months. The moment he saw it, his hope of survival came rushing back. He tried everything to signal the ship, waving, shouting, doing whatever he could. But unfortunately, the people on the ship couldn't see his small boat. And just like that, his hope of survival was shattered once again. Just imagine, after fighting death every single day in the middle of the ocean, finally seeing a chance to be saved only for it to pass by and ignore you. After 11 months, José had drifted nearly 8,000 kilometers on that tiny boat. His clothes were torn, and he had nothing left to protect himself from the harsh sunlight except a single piece of clothing. Finally, the moment arrived when fate began to favor him. On January 2014, after a total of 14 months at sea, José noticed coconuts floating in the water around him. He immediately realized that land must be nearby, as coconuts were drifting from trees on an island. After some time, he finally saw the island. Afraid that he might miss it, he jumped into the water and swam toward it. After 14 long months, he finally set foot on land. When he reached the island, he saw a small house there. There was a local person present on the island, and after 438 days, José finally made contact with another human being. This island was a remote part of the Marshall Islands, known as Ibon Atoll. It was located nearly 11,000 kilometers away from his starting point. It was truly a matter of luck that José drifted close to such a tiny island in the vast ocean. Otherwise, if he had missed this island, the next possible land would have been the Philippines, more than 5,000 kilometers away. From there, he was eventually sent back to his home country. But as soon as he returned, another problem awaited him. Yes, after returning, José published a book based on his experience, titled 438 Days. However, he was accused of killing his partner, and a legal case was filed against him, even though, as he had explained, his partner had taken his own life. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and share. See you in the next amazing video.